What happens when a former royal sits down with one of Britain's most provocative talk show hosts, and the conversation spirals completely out of control? Well, you're about to find out exactly what went down when Meghan Markle appeared on Jimmy Kimmel's show for what was supposed to be a routine interview about her latest charitable endeavors, but instead turned into one of the most heated exchanges ever caught on live television. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think about celebrity interviews gone wrong. The tension was palpable from the moment Meghan walked into the studio. Jimmy Kimmel, known for his sharp wit and uncompromising interview style, had been preparing for this moment for weeks. The booking had come through official channels, with Meghan's team promising a candid discussion about her new initiative supporting women in entrepreneurship. What they didn't expect was Jimmy's relentless questioning style and his refusal to stick to the agreed-upon talking points. "Welcome to the show, Meghan," Jimmy began, his voice carrying that familiar edge that regular viewers knew meant trouble was brewing. "I have to say it's quite something to have you here, especially given all the controversy surrounding your recent statements about the media." Meghan shifted in her chair, her media training kicking in as she flashed her practice smile. "Thank you for having me, Jimmy. I'm really excited to talk about the important work we're doing with women entrepreneurs around the world," but Jimmy wasn't interested in letting her control the narrative. "Yes. Well, we'll get to that, but first, I think our viewers deserve some clarity on a few things. You've made some pretty serious allegations about the British press over the years. Do you stand by those claims? Or was that just convenient storytelling for your American audience?" The question hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Meghan's smile faltered for just a moment before she composed herself. "I think what's important to focus on is the positive change we can create when we support each other rather than dwelling on past difficulties." "That's a very diplomatic non-answer," Jimmy pressed, leaning forward in his chair. "But I'm not asking about positive change. I'm asking about your specific claims that the British media treated you unfairly because of your race. That's a serious accusation, and I think our viewers deserve to know whether you actually believe that, or if it was just a convenient excuse." The studio fell silent except for the hum of the cameras. Meghan's publicist, seated just off camera, could be seen shifting uncomfortably in her chair. This was already veering far from the agreed-upon interview topics. "I think," Meghan said slowly, her voice taking on a slightly harder edge, "that anyone who followed the coverage of my time in the UK would be able to see the patterns for themselves. I don't need to spell it out for people who are paying attention." Jimmy's eyebrows shot up. "Patterns? You mean like the pattern of covering a public figure who married into the royal family? Because that's literally what the press does. They covered Kate Middleton extensively, too. And she's as British as they come." "The coverage was different, and you know it," Meghan shot back, her composure beginning to crack. "The tone, the focus on every little thing I did or said, the way my family was treated, it was all designed to tear me down." "Or maybe," Jimmy countered, "it was because you seem to have a problem with fundamental aspects of royal life from day one. The protocols, the traditions, the expectations. You knew what you were signing up for when you married Harry." Meghan's jaw tightened. "I signed up to serve the people and support the monarchy. I didn't sign up to be treated like a second-class citizen or to have my every move scrutinized and twisted into something negative." "Second-class citizen." Jimmy's voice rose slightly. "You were given a platform that millions of people could only dream of. You had access to resources, influence, and opportunities that most people will never have. And instead of embracing that responsibility, you complained about it." "I embrace the responsibility completely," Meghan replied, her voice growing more defensive. "I worked harder than anyone to fulfill my duties and connect with people. The problem was that certain elements within the institution and the media had already decided they didn't want me there." Jimmy leaned back, a slight smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "So, everyone else was the problem. The institution that had successfully welcomed other outsiders was suddenly broken when you arrived. The media that had initially celebrated your engagement was suddenly racist. The British public that had initially embraced you was suddenly hostile. Everyone was wrong except you." "That's not what I said," Meghan protested, but there was an edge of frustration creeping into her voice now. "Isn't it, though?" Jimmy pressed. "Because from where I'm sitting, It looks like you've never taken responsibility for any of the problems that arose during your time as a working royal. It was always someone else's fault, someone else's prejudice, someone else's failure to accommodate you. Meghan's eyes flashed with anger. You have no idea what it was like. You have no idea what I endured behind closed doors, the isolation, the lack of support when I was struggling. And I sympathize with that, Jimmy said, his tone softening slightly before hardening again. But you weren't the first person to find royal life challenging. The difference is that previous generations understood that service meant sacrifice. That sometimes you put the institution before your personal feelings. Service. Meghan's voice was rising now. You call being silenced and controlled service? You call being told you can't speak up for yourself or defend your character service. I call fulfilling your duties and honoring your commitment service, Jimmy replied coolly.
Something.
You seem to struggle with from the beginning. The interview was spiraling into territory that neither side had anticipated, and the tension in the studio was becoming almost unbearable. Meghan's publicist was now frantically trying to get the attention of the show's producer, making cutting motions across her throat. But Jimmy was just getting started. He could sense he had struck a nerve, and like a seasoned interviewer, he wasn't about to let up. Let's talk about commitments then, Jimmy continued, his voice taking on an even sharper edge. You made a commitment when you married Harry. You made promises to the Queen, to the Commonwealth, to the British people, and then when things got difficult, you walked away. How is that honoring your word? Meghan's hands were now visibly trembling with anger. I didn't walk away. I was pushed out. There's a difference between leaving by choice and being forced out by a system that never wanted you to succeed. Pushed out. Jimmy's laugh was harsh and disbelieving. You negotiated a deal with Netflix worth millions while you were still a working royal. You were planning your exit strategy before you even gave the institution a real chance to work. That's absolutely not true, Meghan snapped, her media training completely abandoned now. We tried everything to make it work. We suggested a half-in, half-out arrangement that would have let us serve the crown while also having some independence. It was rejected because it was ridiculous, Jimmy shot back. You can't be half royal. You can't pick and choose which parts of the job you want to do. Either you're committed to the service or you're not. And clearly you weren't. Meghan stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I'm not going to sit here and be lectured by someone who has no understanding of what I went through. You want to talk about commitment? I committed my entire life to that family, and they hung me out to dry. Sit down, Meghan, Jimmy said calmly, but his eyes were gleaming with the thrill of having gotten such a reaction. We're not finished here. Actually, we are, Meghan replied. But she remained standing, her whole body radiating tension. This isn't an interview. This is an ambush. And I won't stand for it. An ambush? Jimmy's voice dripped with sarcasm. I'm asking you basic questions about your public statements and actions. If you can't handle that, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews at all. You're twisting everything I say, Meghan accused, pointing a finger at him. You're taking my words out of context and using them to support your predetermined narrative about me. I'm using your own words, Jimmy replied, pulling out a stack of papers. Would you like me to read back some of your quotes? Because I have them right here. Your exact words about feeling suicidal, about not being protected, about the racism you faced.
Are you now saying you didn't mean those things?
The mention of her mental health struggles seemed to hit Meghan like a physical blow. Her face went pale, and for a moment, she seemed to deflate. Those were deeply personal experiences that I shared because I thought it might help other people who were struggling. Or because you thought it would generate sympathy and deflect criticism, Jimmy suggested ruthlessly. Mental health is a serious issue, Meghan. And using it as a shield against legitimate questions about your behavior is deeply problematic. How dare you? Meghan's voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried more venom than any shout. How dare you minimize what I went through? You have no right to question the validity of my mental health struggles. I'm not questioning your mental health, Jimmy clarified, though his tone remained aggressive. I'm questioning your decision to weaponize it in a public forum against people who can't defend themselves. Weaponize. Meghan's voice cracked with emotion. I share my truth because I was tired of being silenced. I was tired of letting other people control my narrative while I suffered in silence. Your truth, Jimmy repeated mockingly. What about Harry's truth? What about the Queen's truth? What about the truth of the staff members you allegedly bullied? Or do only your feelings matter in this situation? The bullying allegations clearly struck another nerve. Meghan's face flushed with anger. Those allegations were investigated and found to be without merit. But of course, you're not interested in the findings, just in perpetuating the smear campaign. Were they found to be without merit? Jimmy challenged. Because from what I understand, the results of that investigation were never made public. Very convenient, wouldn't you say? The palace chose not to make them public, Meghan said through gritted teeth. That wasn't my decision. How convenient for you, Jimmy replied. Just like how convenient it was that you couldn't remember briefing the authors of that biography about you, even though it contained information that only you could have provided. I did not collaborate with the authors of that book, Meghan stated firmly. But there was something in her voice that suggested she was on shaky ground. Really? Jimmy's smile was predatory now. Because the court case suggested otherwise. In fact, didn't you have to apologize to the court for initially denying your involvement when evidence showed you had indeed provided information? That's enough, Meghan snapped. This interview is over. I'm not going to sit here and be attacked by someone who clearly has an agenda against me. I don't have an agenda, Jimmy replied calmly, clearly enjoying having gotten under her skin. I have questions. The same questions that millions of people have been asking since you left the UK. If you can't answer them, maybe that says more about you than it does about me. You're impossible, Meghan shot back, her voice shaking with controversy, drama, conflict. That's all you care about. What I care about, Jimmy said, his voice rising to match hers, is accountability. You've made serious allegations against one of our most respected institutions. You've damaged relationships, caused pain to people who can't fight back, and then you expect to waltz back into the public eye without being challenged on any of it. I never expected not to be challenged, Meghan replied, her voice breaking slightly. But I expected to be treated with basic human decency. Something you've shown you're incapable of. Jimmy leaned forward, his eyes never leaving hers. Human decency? Like the decency you showed when you blindsided the Queen with your exit announcement? Like the decency you showed when you aired private family conversations on international television? Like the decency you showed when you allowed your friends to attack the royal family in the press while you stayed silent? I protected that family for years, Meghan shouted, all pretense of composure gone now. I kept quiet about things that would have destroyed them. I took abuse and criticism without fighting back because I thought it was the right thing to do. Until you decided it wasn't, Jimmy pointed out coldly. Until you decided that your personal happiness was more important than the institution you had sworn to serve. The accusation hung in the air between them like a challenge, and everyone in the studio could sense they were approaching a point of no return. You want to know about personal happiness versus duty? Fine, Meghan snapped. Let me tell you about duty. Duty is standing there smiling while people tear you apart in the press. Duty is keeping your mouth shut while your character is assassinated daily. Duty is watching your husband suffer because he's watching you suffer and being unable to do anything about it. And duty is also honoring your commitments when times get tough, Jimmy said. Duty is putting the greater good above your personal feelings. Something previous generations understood perfectly well. Previous generations? Meghan's voice was incredulous. You mean the generation that stayed silent while Diana was hounded to death by the same press you're defending? You mean the generation that learned nothing from that tragedy and allowed history to repeat itself? The mention of Diana clearly struck a chord. Jimmy's expression shifted slightly, but he pressed on. Don't you dare use Diana's memory to justify your actions. Diana never abandoned her duties. She never ran away to California to make deals with streaming services. Diana didn't have the option to run away, Meghan shot back, her voice cracking with emotion. She was trapped in a system that didn't protect her, just like I was. The difference is that I had someone who was willing to get me out before it was too late. So, you're comparing yourself to Diana now? Jimmy's voice was filled with disbelief. You think your situation was comparable to hers? I think, Meghan said, her voice shaking with rage, that you're all so determined to tear me down that you can't see the parallels. You can't see that the same toxic cycle was starting all over again. The only toxic thing here, Jimmy replied harshly, is your refusal to take responsibility for your role in any of this. Everything is always someone else's fault with you. My role. Meghan was practically screaming now. My role was to be a scapegoat. My role was to be the outsider who could be blamed for everything wrong with the monarchy. My role was to be the woman of color who could be torn down without consequence. There it is, Jimmy said, his voice dripping with satisfaction. The race card. When all else fails, cry racism. It's your go-to defense for everything. It's not a card, Meghan replied, her voice deadly quiet now. It's reality. And the fact that you're so quick to dismiss it proves my point perfectly. What proves my point, Jimmy said, is that you've never been able to handle criticism without claiming it's motivated by racism. Maybe, just maybe, people criticized you because of your actions, not your race. And maybe, Meghan said, standing up again, and this time moving toward the edge of the set, you're exactly the kind of person who would never understand the difference because you've never had to live it. Jimmy stood up too, sensing that she was about to leave. Running away again, Meghan. Just like you did before. I'm not running away, Meghan replied, her voice filled with contempt. I'm choosing not to waste any more time on someone who's clearly incapable of having an honest conversation. Honest conversation. Jimmy's laugh was bitter. You wouldn't know an honest conversation if it hit you in the face. You've been spinning tales since day one. Spinning tales. Meghan whirled around to face him. You mean like the tale that I was welcomed into the royal family? Or the tale that I was given adequate support? Or the tale that the press coverage was fair and balanced? I mean the tale that you were some kind of victim, Jimmy replied, his voice rising. You had every advantage, every opportunity, every resource at your disposal, and instead of using them wisely, you threw it all away because you couldn't handle the pressure. I handled the pressure, Meghan said, her voice breaking. I handled it until I couldn't anymore.
Until it was killing me.
Until I realized that no institution, no matter how revered, is worth dying for. Dramatic much? Jimmy's sarcasm was cutting. You weren't dying, Meghan. You were uncomfortable. There's a difference. Don't you dare minimize what I went through. Meghan's voice was barely controlled now. Don't you dare tell me what I was or wasn't experiencing. I'm telling you what the rest of us saw, Jimmy replied coldly. A woman who couldn't handle the job she signed up for and decided to burn everything down on her way out. I didn't burn anything down, Meghan protested.
I
tried to leave quietly. I tried to step back without causing a scene, but you people wouldn't let me. You had to make it into a drama. We didn't make it into a drama, Jimmy shot back. You did, with your television interviews, your tell-all books, your constant need to justify your actions to the world. I justified my actions because people like you were determined to vilify me no matter what I did, Meghan replied. I stayed quiet for months, and what did I get? More attacks, more lies, more vicious coverage. So, you decided to fight back by attacking the people who couldn't respond, Jimmy said. Very brave of you. I told my truth, Meghan said firmly. Something you clearly can't handle. Your truth, Jimmy repeated mockingly. What about their truth? What about the truth of the people you left behind to deal with the mess you created? I didn't create any mess, Meghan said, her voice rising to a shout. I was trying to survive in a system that was designed to break me. The system worked fine until you arrived, Jimmy replied brutally. Maybe the problem wasn't the system. Maybe the problem was you. That seemed to be the final straw. Meghan's face went white with rage, and for a moment, it looked like she might actually attack him physically. Her publicist was now frantically trying to get between them.